What's going on, everybody? You are tuned in to the Stoned On Sports podcast here on this amazing Thursday evening. As always, I got my counterpart here, Kyle, and tonight we're going to talk about catchers. That's right. We're moving on to the backstop, making our way through the positions here, getting ready for the fantasy baseball season. Before we jump into all of that, I do want to say thank you to everybody that comes and hangs out with us, checks out the show after the fact. It's really humbling that, quite frankly, anybody would choose to watch this, and just the fact that we have people who regularly do is pretty damn cool.
Yes, it is.
We're going to get into a little bit of news and notes before we dive right into the catchers, and in the big one, Rob Manfred said he's going to be done after this current term, which ends January 2029. I think I speak for Kyle when I say neither of us are big fans of his. Would you say that's accurate, buddy?
Good riddance, sir. We need a Adam Silver type guy to run this league next time, or in 5 years, I guess. So 5 more years of Manfred. I'll think a little bit better about him if he can fix the streaming blackout bullshit. Oop, there it goes. That really plagues a lot of baseball fans, including myself, when I can't watch the Tigers on MLB TV because I live too close. While you in Indianapolis can watch them whenever you want.
Pretty much.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating.
Yeah. He did mention too wanting to at least get the ball rolling on expansion, get up to 32 teams, and something that I thought was interesting, and you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. The league proposed a 2-week free agency window where all the deals would need to take place within that 2-week time period, and quite frankly, I think it sounds kind of cool. You'd have just a flurry of excitement across those 14 days, and you wouldn't have these, long, drawn out, protracted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even bargaining, really. It's just players sitting there waiting.
Right. And I think how advantageous it could be for fantasy folks. We're all just sitting here waiting for Bellinger to sign, and we're waiting and thinking, and eventually, we'll be doing drafts here in a minute, and he still might be unsigned. So a lot of things like that I think would be kind of cool. Maybe not 2 weeks, maybe it's just 30 days or 3 weeks or something like that. But several months here or a few months is too long.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I did see too that Justin Verlander had a minor shoulder issue, we'll call it, that has him behind schedule this spring. And, he essentially come out and said, hey, like, the body doesn't work the same at 40 as it did when I was 25.
Sure.
I think you and I can both vouch for that.
Sure.
Even though we're not pro athletes.
You get 40 and things start hurting. Right before we hopped on this, I was like, my lower back's really bothering today. And I've had some history of that in the past, but it's been quite a while. And I'm just like, oh, this kind of sucks. But
get your cane ready.
Yeah. And then the Orioles, a couple of their big stars are going to be on the IL to start the season. The right-hander Kyle Bradish, UCL sprain, going to be doing some things. What is that? The plasma, something.
Platelet-rich plasma.
Thank you. Getting an injection of that. And then Gunnar Henderson, American League Rookie of the Year last year, is going to start on the injured list as well with an oblique injury. Yeah, look, get these injuries out the way now, hopefully, because those are two players that will look for big things this year.
Absolutely. And oblique injuries are something that can really linger. So Take care of it now. All right. Ready to get rolling with this? Let's get them rankings up on the board.
Rankings somewhere. They're somewhere. I don't know.
Boom.
Catch a rank. Oh, my bad. Hit the button too. William Contreras on there. But no surprise, Adley Rutschman at the top, followed by Will Smith, Yanier Diaz, JT Realmuto, and William Contreras round out the top 5 there. We'll be talking about a few of these. Most of them are, I don't know, I'd say in the top 16 or so. We're not really talking about the bottom ones too much. It's just a lot of garbage.
It sure is, and I'm sure Shea Langoliers is a fine player, but we will not be devoting any airtime to him.
Right.
Who we are going to devote it to, starting right off, Mr. Adley Rutschman. Right now, he is the number one catcher off the board, and for very good reason. He's got an ADP around 49, 50, somewhere in there, and you can get him for a 20 spot. He finished as the number one catcher last season. He had 463 points, averaged 3 a game. And he's somebody like, look, you'll find catchers that hit more than his 20 home runs or drive in more than his 80 RBIs or have a better triple slash. Last year, he was at 277, 374, 436, good for an 809 OPS. But what you're not going to find is someone that provides a better combination of all three. He's a fantastic player. He is the clear cut number one option at catcher. And to me, it's not even close, really. I wouldn't even entertain an argument for anyone else. Last year, he played in 154 games, which is a lot for a catcher. Now,
Sure.
He DH'd for 40 games last season to help keep his bat in the lineup. I imagine you're going to see more of that this year. He's somebody who's got an excellent eye at the plate. Both his strikeout and walk percentage are both in the top 10%. And he's somebody, and this is a little callback to talking about Alex Bregman yesterday. He only had 9 more strikeouts than walks, which that is so damn rare to see that kind of plate discipline, that kind of eye at the plate, especially for a player as young as he is. He's somebody that has power to all fields. He doesn't hit the ball exceptionally hard, but he does hit more line drives than fly balls. So don't look for him to up his total, his home run total all that much. Maybe he can squeak out 4 or 5 more, and I think that'd be a realistic expectation. He's hitting second in one of the youngest and most exciting lineups in baseball. It seems like the Orioles are just constantly bringing up high pedigree, top tier prospects every year. So if you're an Orioles fan, I'm sure you're loving this. He's somebody who is very patient at the plate, and he makes excellent contact within the zone, and he rarely swings at first pitch or pitches out of the zone. So he's very, very patient again, and that's going to help sustain his high on base percentage. $20 seems like a lot for a catcher, and being real, it kind of is. And even that 49 ADP is kind of rich, but the separation you're getting from the field to me makes it worth it. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah. And I think it's just, there's so many catchers that are young. There's a lot of young talent. Of the 10 catchers that had the most plate appearances last season, 7 of them were in their 20s. So there's a pool of catchers that, I mean, this position probably hasn't been this deep or exciting in a decade or so. But Adley Rutschman is the man for sure. You mentioned well-rounded. Personally, I'd like to see more power from him than last year. Bottom 40% in exit velo, hard hit rate, and barrel rate. But we can both continue to fantasize, and along with all you, on what his ceiling might eventually be. I think big things to come with him. The ability to get hits, score runs, and drive them in. It's a no-brainer. And like you mentioned, in that lineup, young, exciting, batting in the top part of it, top third of the order, and playing virtually every game.
Absolutely. And I like how much they DH him just to keep his bat in there.
Yep. And you have to. And managers know that now. I mean, the days of catchers in the 80s catching it, it just doesn't happen anymore. So, all right. Next up on our rankings is who we have ranked number 2, Will Smith with the Dodgers, ADP of 81, costing about $15. And it's so early in fantasy that a lot of the auction values, I think, are, skewed. So NFBC, there was only about, 20, 40 picks or something out of those average auction values. So not a ton of volume there to make a full, what's the word I'm looking for?
Assessment.
Correct. Assessment on that. I think some of these will drop a bit, but he was the number 3 catcher last season, currently number 4 off the board. Had a kind of a rough year last year, had a broken rib for much of the season, at least the first half, dealt with a concussion for a few weeks as well. But he is a very patient hitter. Chase rate, whiff rate, strikeout rate, and walk rate were all in the top 25% of the league. I think the broken ribs and maybe the concussion to some extent definitely caused some issues. The exit velo and the launch angle, hard hit rate, and the barrel rate, all those from before, were all down from the prior year. But despite struggling, especially down the stretch, he ranked in the top 5. He ranked among the top 5 catchers in baseball in runs scored, RBIs, on base percentage, and walks. On base percentage is something that is just amazing. You can get that from a catcher. That's a one up. He's not going to hit the most home runs. But he'll be consistently one of the top producing players at his position. I mean, and he's batting cleanup on a loaded fucking Dodgers team. That's got to say something. I like him.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the first note I have for him, cleanup hitter for the Dodgers. Yes, please.
Yep.
He's somebody, his strikeout rate is decreasing. His walk rate is increasing. And you love to see that in terms of his plate discipline. He is hitting more balls on the ground over the past few years. With around a league average exit velocity and fewer fly balls. I think his average is going to remain around the same. Again, he is a very patient hitter. I think he'll be back around the 20 home run mark if he can get 130 games played and even some more if they decide to DH him a little bit. But overall, for the number 2 catcher, at a $5 discount from Adley Rutschman, Kyle, who would you rather have? I think I'd pay up for Rutschman, but it's kind of close.
Yep, I would. Okay. Next up, sorry guys here. JT Realmuto with the Philadelphia Phillies. Finished as catcher number 5 last year. Currently being drafted around 72 for about $18, which I think is too much for him. I guess he kind of had a down year by his standards, or that he's had the last few years. Hit well, had like 5 triples, most at catcher, 20 home runs, 63 RBI, 70 runs scored. Also brings huge value in stolen bases, had 16 as a catcher. That was most at the position by far. I think the next close was 8. But he did take a step back as a hitter. The underlying, he took a step back with those stats, but the underlying stats were the same from more productive seasons. So for instance, his launch angle improved 3.5 degrees, but his barrel rate and his max exit velo were virtually the same. One troubling trend is his plate discipline. His 25.6 strikeout rate last season was 5 points higher than his career mark of around 20. And he ranked in the bottom 43% or worse in chase rate, whiff rate, strikeout rate, and walk rate. I think this is too high for him. This is too much money for him. If you look at the overall ADP, there's some pitchers around him I'd rather like Yuri Perez or Kodai Senga, both number 1 on their team's staff. And both, I think, have a higher ceiling than JT does. Still a 250 hitter that can hit 20 home runs and 15 stolen bases is kind of nice. Don't get me wrong. It still brings some value, especially the steals for sure. But he's going to be 33 on opening day, ton of miles on him. And his run as the clear number 1 fantasy catcher is over.
Yeah, it is. But look, his ability to contribute with power, average, and surprisingly the steals, it makes him a good option at catcher. Just right now, the price is a little bit too steep. Mm-hmm. He's somebody who's been consistent and durable over the years, especially at a position where offensive production can be scarce. His average did dip slightly in 23. He's got a track record. And look, he hit 252. That's still above league average.
Yeah.
Right. So it's down for him. I think there could be a little bit of bounce back, not a whole hell of a lot. But at the end of the day, his mix of power, speed, and consistent production keeps him towards the top of the fantasy baseball catcher rankings this season. He's got the ability to contribute across all categories. He's very reliable. I think you're going to see some regression in the steals, and he's somebody over the years, he's continually stole bases. He's been up around the 20 mark. I think as he ages, obviously you're going to see that come down. I think you're going to see, more strikeouts as well.
Yeah.
So, while he's number 4 on the board, I think there's some clear separation between Rutschman, Will Smith, and then Realmuto and the rest of the folks we're going to be talking about here today.
Agreed. All right. Next up, we have Mr. William Contreras with the Milwaukee Brewers. I like him this year. He might have been my waiver pickup of the year last year. He had not a very good first half, but boy, that second half was kicking. Finished as the number 2 catcher overall last season. Guy had 38 doubles. That was the most at the position, and tied for 7th in all of baseball. Just fantastic. Threw in 17 dingers, 78 RBIs, 86 runs, handful of stolen bases as well. Only Rutschman had more plate appearances than Contreras at the catcher position. I think that's important because that volume provides a solid floor for Contreras. Among catchers with 250 at-bats, Contreras ranked 1st in batting average, runs scored, while also ranking in the top 3 for RBI and stolen bases. That's pretty good. He hits those 38 doubles last year. He hits the ball hard enough where some of those could be home runs this year. Top 20% in exit velo, top 10% in max velo, and he's in the top 15% for hard hit rate. I think maybe he got that average is pretty good, that 291. I think there's some underlying data that suggests he might have been lucky to get there. I guess there's a bit of a risk with taking him with a top 100 pick this year, but his playing time, also while looking to DH this season as well, I think, and he's an above average catcher defensively. He's going to be out there. I think that mitigates a lot of that risk. I look for him to have another outstanding season.
Sure. And there's the very good chance he finishes as, top 3 at the position again this year. You were talking about his batting average. It was supported by a 348 batting average on balls in play. And the on base percentage is just fantastic, regardless of position. You get on base, we'll call it 37% of the time.
Yeah.
And you're putting up an OPS north of 820. What more do you want?
Yeah.
I like that he cut down on his strikeouts, down 7% year over year. His walk rate, 2% above league average. Yeah, I mean, he gave you a handful of steals. I'm not really going to count on that from year to year. But at the same time, if he can contribute across 4 categories and, in points leagues, especially, he's somebody that'll draw a walk. And if he continues to improve on his strikeout rate, he's going to be fantastic. His improved contact rate and ability to get on base at a high clip, it's going to keep him in the heart of the Brewers lineup, is going to provide ample RBI and run scoring opportunities. And there's a reason why he's the number 5 catcher, or no, where is he at?
He's our number 5.
Yeah, he's our number 5 catcher. I apologize. I can't remember what his ADP is. He's the number 3 catcher off the board. Yeah. So, this season, I'm looking for him to put up something between 18 to 24 home runs, between 75 and 85 RBIs, score around 85 with a very solid triple slash, a 285, 367, and 460.
Yeah.
I like him.
Same.
Where are we going next? You know what? Let's head out to the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about Big Dumper, Cal Raleigh.
He's going to hate them new uniforms.
Oh, yeah. Along with everybody else.
Yeah.
He finished as the number 4 catcher last season. This year, he's a number 7 catcher off the board. ADP of about 134, and you can get him for under a 10 spot, which I'll take all day long. Last season, he had 363 points, good for 2.5 points per game. Last season, it was a testament to his growth as a power hitter. He hit 30 home runs over 145 games. He drove in 75 and scored 78. look, his on base percentage of 306 and batting average of 232 are, we'll call it subpar.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he slugged 456. He had an ISO of 224, and that shows his above average ability to create runs. His walk rate held steady at 9.5%, and he managed to reduce his strikeout rate a little bit. It's down to 27.8%, which is absolutely high.
Yeah.
You know, don't mistake it there. But his overall power potential makes him an attractive option at catcher. And that's typically a position that's thin on high impact players. Let's be real here. The ability to hit 25 to 30 home runs while providing solid run production is going to be a boon to your rosters. Again, just be prepared. You're trading average for power. I can't see him hitting any higher than maybe 240, but he walks a little bit higher than average. That helps to mitigate it a little bit. So he's got a little more value in on base percentage leagues as opposed to batting average leagues. Coming into this season, he represents a compelling power hitting option. I like his consistent home run hitting potential and maybe even a chance for some growth there. I think he's going to have another strong season. He's not going to win a batting title, but really his overall contribution, especially in power categories and run producing categories, he's going to be a valuable asset. He's a high upside option at catcher.
Yeah.
And one thing too, his defense and durability helps ensure he's going to stay in the lineup. This season, I'm looking for something around 27 home runs, driving in 75 and scoring 75. We'll call it a 235 average, 310 on base, and a 450 slugging. It'll give you a 760 OPS, and that's good enough to keep your ass in the majors.
It sure, yeah. His 30 home runs were number one at the position, so that was awesome. They'll strike out a lot. I think it was almost 28% strikeout rate last season. That could easily cause you to spiral, coupled with your low batting average. Don't forget he hit 211 in 2022, so that could be in play again. So beware.
It is, and that's not that big a drop off from what he did last season.
Yeah. For me, there's similar players in this tier that are cheaper. So I'd rather wait than take on that kind of risk.
Sure. All right. Next up, going to Hotlanta, Mr. Sean Murphy. He was a number 11 catcher last season, and that was kind of a disappointing finish. This year, he's a number 9 catcher off the board, going around pick 141. You can get him again for $9, just like a dude we just talked about. If you look at his season last year, he started out just gangbusters, right? First half of the season, 306, 400, 599 triple slash, 17 home runs, drove in 55, had 17 doubles and scored 42. In the second half, his line looks like about something that I would put up. 159 average, 310 on base, 4 home runs, 13 RBIs, 4 doubles, scored 23 runs. He's battled some injuries. Look, he played a ton in April and May, played 23 games each, as a matter of fact. The next 4 months, 13 games, 15, 16, and 14.
Yeah. So, and that second half, he still had an 899 OPS through August. It was really a horrible fucking September.
Oh, dude, it was brutal. But I mean, at the end of the day, he played in 108 games. He hit a career high 21 home runs, scored 65 and knocked in 68. He still ended up with a 365 on base percentage, had a walk rate of 11.2%. That's damn good. That's around 3% above league average. His slugging percentage highlights his power. Struck out about 22.5% of the time, but even still, he managed to put up a 251 batting average. Look, at the end of the day, he's got the ability to contribute significant power numbers. He's got above average on base skills. He's a damn solid option at the position. His improved walk rate and solid on base percentage also make him very valuable in leagues that reward on base percentage, or swap out that in favor of or swap out average in favor of on base percentage. He's a good defensive catcher. He's going to stay in the lineup. They do have Travis d'Arnaud there, who
Yeah.
they go back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
He's not going to steal any bases, but he can give you power and on base. This year, 22 home runs, drive in 68, score 65, and I'm looking for him to have an 813 OPS buoyed by a 345 on base percentage.
I like Sean Murphy, somebody you could buy low on, but I think he's his value decreases in points leagues, which we mostly talk about just because the volume is king. He only had 438 plate appearances because of splitting catching duties with Travis d'Arnaud. Those 21 home runs, ranked 5th among catchers, despite having 100 fewer at bats than some of these other top catching options. Just fantastic. He's what, top 5% in expected slugging, top 6% in max exit velo. His hard hit rate and chase rate, walk rate, all in the top 25% or better. I hate that he has to split time with him so much. I don't like that.
Not particularly.
It's just crazy that September just tanked his OPS. It was horrible. He had a 451 OPS for the month of September. After that 999 OPS in the first half. Just crazy. But I'm not going to judge him too harshly. That was only 55. That was like 55 bad at bats at the end of an otherwise excellent season. So somebody that you could buy low on, I think.
I think so too. And you can get him 14th round, 13th round, just depending on your league size.
Yeah. Next up, Gabriel Moreno with the Diamondbacks. Had a World Series appearance last year. Young guy. Average draft position 149, costing about $10, probably a little high. Had a midseason slump. Had some shoulder injuries for most of July. Didn't have a great, first half before that. Caught fire after that. Slashing 313, 383, 512 with 5 home runs and 24 RBIs the rest of the way. Impressive in the postseason as well. Only had 60 playoff at bats, hit 4 dingers. That's a good rate. Above average hitter and hard hit rate, chase rate, strikeout rate, and whiff rate, where he's top 20%. His walk rate's far below average. I think that'll improve with some more at bats and against some major league pitching. He's only had, before this last season, he only had 60 some major league at bat. So, do you think the Blue Jays are kicking themselves?
It's quite possible.
I mean, you traded what wasn't it? Gurriel and him for Varsho. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did that fucking turn out? Not too good. I think he offers a high fantasy floor at a fair ADP. With the potential to climb even higher. Some improvements at the plate, like I mentioned, some more time at bats going against major league pitching. I think he could become one of the better all-around catchers in baseball in the next few years.
Absolutely. And look, his performance last year laid a solid foundation, and he's a young dude, so you can expect some gains. I think he's a better catcher for keeper in dynasty leagues as opposed to redraft.
He's only 20. Yeah, he's 23.
Yep.
So,
he maintained a high batting average. He can get on base, especially, his 339 on base percentage was especially impressive for somebody who's so young. He only slugged 408 and had a 123 ISO. So there's definitely some room for power development. But even if he can see a little bit of gains there, you're talking about a well above average major league hitter.
Yeah. And he did well. The slugging percentage was .512 in the second half, so it really pulled him up. So I like this cat. Somebody I'll be watching for sure.
Yeah. Or if you're in 2 catcher leagues, or you're
That
looking
too.
for a high upside, bench catcher. I know most people are not going to carry 2 catchers, but at the same time, you look at the batted ball skills and it's hard to keep him on the bench, or, I can't see him just sitting on the waiver wire.
No. I mean, he's going to be an everyday catcher there too. So plenty of volume.
All right. Where are we going next? Let's go to New York. What do you say?
Sure.
Francisco Alvarez. So this dude right here, he finishes a number 16 catcher last season. Right now, he's a number 10 catcher off the board. ADP around 146, 147. And it's almost like a trend here. It's another catcher you can pick up for about $10. Scored 273 points last season, averaged 2.2 per game. He generated significant buzz last season. He was somebody who had a fantastic prospect pedigree, and we saw the power potential there. He played in 123 games. He gave you 25 home runs, scored 51 times, and drove in 63. Now to the not so great part. His batting average was 209 and an on-base percentage of 284. And look, that's your typical rookie adjustment period against major league pitching. And that's actually a pretty respectable delta between average and on-base percentage. But what you have him for is the power. He had a 228 ISO. Even though his BABIP, which was only 222, suggested some bad luck, he struck out at a 26% clip, but he walked around 8% of the time, which is major league average. But there is some opportunity for improvement there. His power is his primary fantasy asset. He's going to be a good source of home runs for you and some RBIs, which is especially valuable coming from the catcher position. Temper those expectations when it comes to average and on-base percentage, though. But just understand there's some opportunity for growth. He's coming into his age 22 season, so he's even younger than Gabriel Moreno. I think he is a high upside option at catcher, especially if you can absorb the hit in batting average for the sake of power. Dynasty and keeper leagues, his value is significantly higher than where we have him here for redraft. Look, he's somebody with significant fantasy potential, again, coming down to his power. And there's aspects of his game that need refinement. We understand that. But his ability to contribute meaningful home runs and RBIs can make a difference. Keep an eye on him this spring and in the early season. You might see some improvement in his contact and plate discipline. If that happens, you're getting a steal where he is. This year, I'm looking for 23 home runs, drive in 70, score 60, 220 average, 300 on base percentage, slug 455, good for a 755 OPS, which is damn good for somebody that young and playing that position.
Yeah, I think he is going to be somebody very exciting. You mentioned the walk rate, 8%. I think that I took some look at his AAA stats in 2022. Had a 17% walk rate. And then looked through his minor league career some more and was consistently posting big time walk rates. So I look for that to improve this season. I think it will. Yeah, somebody keep your eye on, like you mentioned. I do like him. I don't know if I kind of compare him to Cal. I think he's probably just a cheaper Cal Raleigh.
I'd agree with that.
All right.
And depending on your roster build, both of them are going to be very viable fantasy options for you.
Yes, they will. All right. Next up, we got Jonah Heim with the Rangers, World Series champion Jonah Heim.
He's pointing at you.
He is finished as a number 6 catcher overall last season. being drafted around 160, average is $8. I mean, I kind of like this guy more than some of these guys we just talked about a moment ago. He set career bests in all major statistical categories. 28 doubles through 18 or through hit 18 dingers, 95 RBIs, 61 runs scored. Doesn't hit the ball very hard. I don't get it. I don't understand how you can get that. With a below average exit velocity, hard hit rate, and barrel rate. I think that the lack of those batted ball skills doesn't leave you much wiggle room for things to go wrong. Even if he regresses a bit, I think that he'll still deliver solid production thanks to his good plate discipline. Struck out under 20% of the time each of the past 2 seasons, with a average 8% walk rate, above average whiff rate. So expect plenty of runs and RBIs, just like last year. And again, he's in that strong Rangers lineup. And he will be in it because he is stellar behind the plate. Draft him with confidence this year.
Absolutely. It also helps the ballpark that he plays in. I forget the name of it. I always think of the ballpark in Arlington, but it's not it. There was the most home runs hit there of any ballpark in baseball last season. Look, he's another dude. His ability to contribute home runs and RBIs while not being a liability in average or on base, that's what sets him apart.
Yeah.
Given the scarcity of such well-rounded catchers like that, our number 12 ranking on him, I think, is kind of conservative. And I know you and I went back. He's one that you and I went back and forth on. But somebody's got to be number 12, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just kind of how it works. Strikeout rates below average, barely, but still below average. Walk rates right around major league average. So it's, he's got a nice balance approach. I love the lineup. So do you. Love the ballpark. And just because he's so good behind the plate defensively as a catcher, with him being in the lineup all the time, and that lineup, I think he's fantastic. I would happily take him at his ADP. I would happily give up $8 for him.
Yeah.
But you brought it up kind of at the top of the show. I think he's somebody who, as we get closer to mid-March, you're going to see some helium with him. I think he's going to start going earlier and earlier. Maybe he ends up being around 130 instead of 161.
Yeah.
Maybe his AAV ends up somewhere around $11 or $12 instead of $8. Even at that price. Yeah. Just going to say the same thing. I'm still a buyer there.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's this season I'm looking for 21 home runs, driving in 85, scoring 64, a 765 OPS. I mean, what the hell more do you want in the 16th round or for $8?
Agreed. All right.
Our last one.
Yeah. Jeez, we talked too fast.
Right. Well, I mean, these are catchers. It's not like we're talking about starting pitchers or outfielders or something like that. Catcher is historically a very shallow position. And I always compare catcher to tight end in fantasy football.
That's exactly what it is.
It's top heavy and you can find some value later. But once you get outside of the top 10 or so, flip a coin, draw a name out of a hat. It's not going to matter because chances are you're going to be disappointed with who you get anyway. Speaking of disappointments, Keibert Ruiz, the Washington Nationals. Last season, he was actually a number 7 catcher. This year, he's the number 15 catcher off the board. ADP of 165, average auction value of $9. I can tell you I would not pay more for him than I would Jonah Heim.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Had 350 points last season, scored 2.6 per game. And he's somebody who he showed significant signs of growth during the season last year, particularly in the power department. He had a career high 18 home runs. And he's someone who his development as a hitter, coupled with his role on a rebuilding Nationals team. Look, you have a chance at a potential sleeper here right? At number 15 catcher off the board. Last year, he appeared in 136 games. He drove in 67 runs. He scored 55. And despite the power surge, his batting average remains steady at 260 with an on base percentage of 308. And looking at that delta, what's that tell us? He doesn't draw a whole hell of a lot of walks. But, and this is what is great, strikeout rate was only 10%, which is amazing.
I love a 25-year-old switch hitter that only strikes out 10% of the time.
Right. Especially one that can hit you 18 to 20 home runs.
Yep.
And because of that low strikeout rate, that suggests there's some room for growth in his batting average and on base percentage. I think he's a really intriguing option this season. And look, he's not among the elite fantasy catchers yet, but his potential for growth and his everyday playing time is going to give him plenty of opportunity to produce, to make him a solid choice in deeper leagues or as a second catcher in 2-catcher formats. I'm really looking for him to show some improvements in his batting average because of that low strikeout rate. And he's somebody who there could definitely be some equity there come the end of the season based on where you're able to get him. I think he's the biggest sleeper on the board at catcher this year, quite frankly. Yeah. If you're willing to invest. His overall fantasy impact, he's not going to rival Adley Rutschman. He's not going to rival Will Smith, but there's no reason that he can't sneak into, being a top 10 catcher again this season, quite frankly. I'm looking for 17 home runs, 62 RBIs, 55 runs, a 270, 320, 410 triple slash, good for a 730 OPS. And especially with the average and on base percentage, I went a little conservative there.
Yeah.
I think there's room for even more.
There is. We talked about that 10% strikeout rate, top 1% of the league last year, and 7th league wide since 2021 with a minimum of 500 plate appearances. 7th.
Is that good?
That's freaking fantastic. Another thing I really like about him, his ability to make contact with the ball. Now, making contact with the ball, it's a good thing. Obviously, I understand it's up to the player to what they do with that contact. But a player that makes that much consistent contact caught my attention. I really like this guy. I actually did pick him up last season on my team. A month before I picked up William Contreras because Keibert wasn't doing much. A lot of his stuff happened later and ended up going with Contreras. But had I still kept Keibert Ruiz, I would have been fine.
Oh, yeah. He made an appearance on my roster. Cal Raleigh made an appearance on my roster. I was a catcher whore last season. I would get pissed off and drop somebody because I got impatient. It's like, all right, off to the heap you go. Who am I dancing with next? I think I had 4 or 5 catchers on my team at various points throughout the year. I'm going to try and be a little bit more patient this year.
Yeah. But the glimpses of power we did see from him, awesome upside. I would like to just add on what you said. That would definitely put him in contention to be among the best catchers in the league.
Hell yeah.
I like him. Holy cow.
We burned through that.
Yeah, not bad. Shit. Want to talk about anything else, or ain't nobody else here? Oh, yeah. It says one viewer. Not sure who it is. Hi, viewer.
What's going on?
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you.
It.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Well, I think I'm good. Next week, we're going to be diving into relief pitchers on Tuesday. And a relief pitcher is one of those positions where you need to make a decision because relief pitchers, there's a run on them in every single draft. And are you going to pay up for an elite relief pitcher or not? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but saves are one of those things that you can always find on the wire.
That's what I'm saying. Relief pitching, I very, very confident that I can find great value and people who will contribute to my fantasy team on the waiver wire. Most important thing. Most important thing. Heck yeah. Cool.
And then, of
All
course,
right.
you got Ramey coming back next Thursday. I'll be away. So, viewer, I'm sure you're excited about that. His triumphant return.
Yes, we'll talk about something that day. Not sure what, but we'll wrap for sure. But cool. Thanks for joining us for the catcher preview. The rankings are on the website, stonedownsportspodcast.com. Don't forget to smash those likes and subscribe. If you're watching this after, give us a subscribe. We got lots of good content here for you. Getting ready for the fantasy baseball season while football is over with for a while. Otherwise, I don't got anything else. You?
Yeah. Nope, I am good to go.
Perfect.
Appreciate you, everyone. Let us know down in the comments. What catchers do you like this year?
Sure. Absolutely.
All
Have
right,
a great
folks.
night, folks. We'll see you Tuesday.